All right, hello, hello. Making sure sound's on. Cool. All right, awesome. Okay, just had to do a quick type. Hi everybody. Welcome to our series of doing our home automation app. If you haven't been with us from the beginning, we started out with a design of an app in Adobe XD, and then we've been slowly building it, starting with the backend using Python and Flask. And now we're doing a little bit of front end stuff today with some HTML, and then we're also going to add a couple routes using Flask and Python so that they're connected and so we can submit stuff to the database. So that is the plan today. I do have kind of a cool idea. I think it's cool at least, that I wanted to propose to you all and see what you all thought. So definitely Karen's hanging out in chat for me, so she'll see what you all think and she can just let me know, if it's general positive, general, negative, good thing, bad thing kind of thing. But I'm actually wearing the shirt today. Um, it's coming up to Hacktoberfest here in a couple months. And Hacktoberfest, if you don't know what it is a great way to get used to working on open source projects on GitHub. So essentially, all you do is you go to the Hacktoberfest website and you link it to your GitHub account, and then it counts how many, I think it's pull requests. Their website will definitely tell you more. I believe it's pull requests. I believe last year it was 5. If you did 5 pull requests in the month of October, you got a free T-shirt, which is super fun. Who doesn't love free T-shirts? Everybody does. Um, so the reason I'm telling you about this is, in my experience going and doing Hacktoberfest, it's been a little bit hard to find um, things that I feel like I can contribute to, especially in a month trying to do 5 pull requests. Sometimes some of the issues or different asks out there by different developers can be kind of big and feel kind of daunting. Especially for beginners and people who haven't done open source before. So what I was gonna propose is that I'm going to purposely leave some bugs or some room for improvement in our project that we've been working on. And then I will set up the GitHub for this project with some issues so that you can jump in during the month of October and fork the project, fix that issue, give me a pull request, and I will, I'll look it over, I'll send you feedback if it needs any feedback, and then accept the pull request. And then you've added to this awesome project that we've been working on, and you get to work towards practicing pull requests and forking projects and working with issues and all that great stuff on GitHub. Um, and if you do 5, by the end of the month, you get a free T-shirt from Hacktoberfest. So that is my proposal. Um, I'm going to try and do some across the board. So I'm going to try and leave like some CSS stuff, some HTML stuff, some JavaScript, some on the front end side JavaScript, and then some back end Python stuff so that there's kind of a wide range to kind of hopefully catch just about everyone. So um, how to quickly show how to put the logo on the web tab using href. I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but we can get to that in just a second. So that's my proposal, is to set this up for Hacktoberfest so that y'all can partake in Hacktoberfest and you have something that you've been watching, that you've been following, that you probably feel a little bit more comfortable contributing to. So that's the idea. So let me know in chat, or let Karen know in chat, and she'll let me know um, what y'all think, and if you think that's a good idea or a bad idea. Because it does take a little bit of setup on my part that I will probably work on during live stream next month so that you all can see kind of how that setup works and hear more about how to contribute. But if not, we'll keep working on this project, just me working on it as is. But if so, then that gives you all the opportunity to jump in and try your hand at it. So let me know what you think. If you watch this later and you want to let me know what to think, you can tweet at me. I have a brand speaking kind of new Twitter that's at Amendola Megan, and you can just tweet at me that you think it's, you want to do it or not. So yeah. Other than that, we're going to jump in. I'm going to be doing, to speed things up a little bit, that way I'm not sitting here typing individual lines of HTML code for a while. I'm going to do a little bit of copying and pasting and then kind of discuss what I've copy and pasted and like what you're looking at. Just to speed things up, because sitting here, me trying to type it all out would take much longer than me copying and pasting and describing what I did. Everything that I'm copying and pasting from is already up on the repo. It's under up here where you see there's 3 branches. I'm on this Flask Node WTF forms, and that's where I'm copying and pasting from. That's the branch that I've been working on when I've been adding things around. So that is the plan. And someone had a question about how to put the logo on the web tab. I think you mean like this up here, like this little icon. I'm trying to remember what the name of that is called. I feel like I had it in here. Nope. The description is part of the stuff that pops up there. The title in your head tag, the title is what gets put here. Oops. Here, this text here. So you can see it says Home Automation App because I have it say Home Automation App. But I can't remember what the name, oh, it's called a favicon. Favicon. So if you Google favicon, there's favicon generators, and it generates, you just give it your logo, and it generates the HTML and stuff that you need. And then you just copy paste it into your project. So it's called a favicon, and then if you Google it, you can find generators and stuff like that. Super easy. Cool. So I'm going to jump into the project. I'm going to show you all what I have right now. So this is right now. Let me pull up our designs so that we can also see kind of the goal. Unless Adobe XD takes forever. Come on. This one. There we go. And it always makes it so tiny. I'm like, gotta zoom in here. Okay. So this is our goal. So right now with HTML and with Bootstrap, we can get a lot of these, the layout of these items done pretty close to what we want. And then with CSS, we kind of go in and finish it off. So for instance, our title is already in its own box, but it's over here, and we can use CSS to center the text. And all of our icons, this is just the automatic size that they come in as, so we can use CSS to bump those up in size. So those are just some of the examples of things that we will adjust with CSS. Okay, so this is how we left off last time. I just added the icons, just so that they're there. But you can see we kind of have our layout already done. If I pop, oops, back over to our design, we have our sun, our 2 items here, rain percentage and wind speed, and then our next 3 days. And then we have our 2 cards. We don't have an image, so it just has an automatic little image placeholder for now. So that's what we got going right now. So I'm going to copy paste in the next section. I did try to add some HTML comments in here to help show where these different sections break up to. So we had our events section, that's all done. Like copy in our grocery. I don't know why. Anytime I jump on live streams with you all, my mouth just stops wanting to function and I can no longer say words. So I'm going to go ahead and copy over the grocery and to do, and then we can talk about what these are. Okay. So we have those two sections. We do need to be within, I believe, there's another div here, this container, which is purple. That's why I like my rainbow colors. Now I just follow purple down and it's so much easier. Oops, too far. I believe we need to be here. And we are missing a closing div for this one, I believe. So let me go ahead and add that in. If I do this, it should highlight this one way at the top. I know this is a lot of scrolling, just bear with me. I just want to make sure that I'm closing out. Yep, cool. Paired it up with that one, so I just wanted to make sure I closed it out. Okay, so I just added a huge chunk, so let's refresh and see what it looks like, and then we'll go in and see what we got going on. So we have our list of grocery items. So we just have, peanut butter. We have a checkbox here that's just kind of floating on its own. And then we have our description. For some grocery items, maybe you need to describe, specifically what kind you need. And then over here we have our to-do item, our to-do task with its button. Ooh, I just saw a bug there. Did you see it? Y'all see that bug? Ooh, maybe that'll be one I leave in. So if I click on the name of mop, it's linked to this to-do button. So that one is too. I wonder if it's both directions. Nope. So that's probably just the ID is tagged to the same one. But then we have our circle with the location, first letter, and it's our list there. So obviously, it's just the HTML and pulling from Bootstrap, so it doesn't look the greatest, but CSS will fix that. So if I pop over into our HTML, so we did our events. Let me pop down so I can show you what's going on. So what I'm using from Bootstrap is they have this layout built into Bootstrap, which is where you have an overarching, let me show you way at the top. I know it's lots of scrolling today. You have this overarching container that takes up however much space. I believe I gave it the idea of body, and I believe when I copy over some CSS, I gave it the full screen width because we only need it to be the size of your screen. We don't need it to scroll. So it starts off with this container, and then inside of that container, you place in rows. And so that's the first part of our design. We have this row, second row, and then this is kind of our third row. And then our add icons are down here in their own bottom row. So I broke it up by rows. So 4 rows, and then we have columns going across. So here we have 1 column, 2 column. This is, 3 and 4, and then down here is 3 and 4, but they're not quite the same size. So in our HTML, I have our container, which is all used in classes. And if you want to see in Bootstrap, layout, so it tells you about your containers, and you can do different sizes. So if I scroll, it takes a little bit. Oh, grid, there we go. And it talks to you about your grid. So here you can see this is how it essentially works. You have your container, you have your row, and then inside of your row, you state your columns. So 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then what's awesome about Bootstrap is you have 3 columns that automatically divides your container or your row into 3 equal pieces for you. Now you can change that if you need to. For instance, if you need this one to be big and these 2 to be smaller, you can do that, but it automatically makes them equal for you, which saves you a lot of time in your CSS. So I'll scroll a bit down. So for instance, it automatically does your equal width. So here it did 2 and this one did 3, showing that you can put them together. And here's where it shows you that you can make one wider. So this one's saying it's column 6, so it wants it to span 6 columns. Remember, grids in design and in our front end are based off of a 12-column grid. So this is saying I essentially want half of those columns to be this middle this middle column, or this, yeah, middle column, and then I want what's left, which would be 3 columns, 3 and 3, to be the size of our outside 2. So a lot of info just to say that when I scroll back down to our grocery section, I'm breaking it up using that same idea. So we have a row, and inside the row, I'm having a column. And to break it up into these become their own columns inside of the column. It gets a little confusing, but you use the same idea where it's container, row, column, container, row, column, just inside, digging down. Question that I got: possible to make the logo go away on full screen of the editor? I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Are you talking about these logos to make these go away? These are just an extension that I have to have the extension so that the file names have the logos on them. And so they automatically go up on the tabs when you open that file. If that's what you're asking about, if you're asking about making these go away, I don't have a favicon yet for my home automation app. I don't know if I will make one, but this is just what Google, at least Google Chrome, automatically puts in for one, just a little world. So I'm not sure if you can make that be nothing. I think it just automatically gives you something. That way, if you size down your browser, it still kind of gives you a hint as to what that page is. So that's my guess of what you're asking. But anyways, inside of our grocery section, it has a row. And of course, our grocery section has to have a form because each of these are, you can see they're all clicking on the same one because I just copy and pasted my form from Bootstrap. So I have to go in and change the IDs. But each of these are a set of checkboxes. And so if I want to do an action on these checkboxes, I put them inside of a form so that I could check, 3 things and have a like edit or delete button pop up to delete them out. So I put them inside of a form so that I could handle that action on the back end. But for right now, it's just empty. So then inside of our, again, you can see container, row, column. It just repeats inside of itself to create these separate columns inside of columns. So of course it makes this big, long rainbow effect on your code, and it kind of pulls it way out here. You can see it on, it's kind of like a fun zigzag motion on our right side here, if you can see the way it's laying out. But then it's just a repeated same group of items. So we have, I brought these from our Bootstrap. So if I go over to forms, let me see if it has, form group, because that's where I pulled this from. Let me see if I can find our form group. Form groups, there we go. So I brought it in from form group because it groups your different things together for you, and it makes it, I like doing it this way because it groups essentially your label, your input, and all this stuff. Like this piece is a group, this piece is a group, and then as a whole, this makes up a form, which is another group. And I find that's easier when going into my CSS. If, for example, I need to style this one different than this one, it's easier to grab it by giving this one its own ID, for example, and I know it's going to grab just, this piece instead of the whole form. So I put it into form groups. So I bump over so you can see it's the same thing here, the label, the input, and then I'm just using a paragraph tag for the description. So if it has a description, it'll have the paragraph tag. If it doesn't, no paragraph tag. So it's just that repeated over and over again. Let's peanut butter. And now in order to get our second row to happen, um, there's a couple ways you can do it. The way I decided to do it is to just I added some CSS to see how this would look when the text is the right size, and I figured, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 per row per column was probably a good number before it would start going below this line, and you would have to scroll. I'm trying to keep it contained. So what I decided is just to say, okay, once you hit 5, create a new column and put the next 5 there, and we'll probably have to cap it at 10, because if you do too many, either you're gonna have to shrink the text, which would eventually get way too small, or it would push it below your screen, which would then make you have to scroll. So I think it's easier to kind of cap the number of items that you can put on the screen at one time. So 10 in total, 5 per column is what I was going with. And I know right now you're like, but Megan, you have so much room. With the CSS attached to it, and these made the correct font size and spacing and things like that, there is not this much space left at the bottom. But yeah, so okay, so that's how it's working. So you see, then I create another column, and then it's those same copy-pasted form groups all the way down. So that is our grocery section, all wrapped up in its own form and ended in its own section. So then our to-do section is essentially the same thing. It is a section that includes our circle, our room location, checkbox, and our label for that checkbox as a form group like this. So this group's a little bit larger because it does include that circle in the room location. That's why this section on the far right looks so much larger, even though it's the same amount of items as the section before. But the exact same thing. Form group with our circle location, our label, and our checkbox. So all those put in there, oops, to create this. And I know you're like, but it doesn't look great. A lot of the times when doing just the HTML on its own, it's not going to look pretty because CSS is kind of what makes the websites pretty. And then JavaScript is what makes them interactive. So it's going to look black and white and pretty plain until we get all of our HTML in, and then we'll pop in with our CSS. Okay, so I'm going to copy over our next section. So these are going to be our modals. And then, oops, cancel. Yes, copy. I don't know why it wasn't copying. And let me make sure. This is all still inside of that container, which I believe, if I scroll back out, is this purple. Yep, okay. Space, Control V. Okay. Make sure and save it. I'm going to show you what it looks like first. Oops. Oh, that's right. I don't have those. I don't have this yet. So let me just do that. And then there's one more. That should be it. Cool. There we go. Okay, so now you can see we have our circle plus button down here, and this toggles our modal. You can also just, click anywhere and it closes your modal. You can click close. You can click the X and it closes your modal. Modals in Bootstrap, you can copy right over. I like to do kind of like they have, where they have their button and then they have the modal right beneath it. I like to do the same thing in my HTML just because they're tied together, right? Instead of having like the button here, and then because in the scheme of things, my modal kind of goes with this information, putting the big chunk of modal stuff up there, I think makes it a little bit confusing. So I like to keep what goes together, kind of group them. So you can see how it works on Bootstrap. You just click it and it tells you this is your very basic modal and how it would work. You get a title, it tells you how exciting it is to read this. You get kind of like a save changes button and a close. And a bunch. So this is one where if you don't want anyone to be able to click outside to close it, it won't close. Whereas before, I can click out here anywhere and it'll close. So it gives you some varieties. I like to be able to click outside, that way if you accidentally open it, it's really easy to close the modal. But for instance, if you had someone or a group of users who weren't as dexterous, and the movement from clicking on that to getting into your modal to click on something is difficult for them, they might accidentally close out the modal, and then this becomes frustrating because they keep not making it to where they want to go. And then that might be a time where you want to have this static backdrop so they get the chance to make it to the modal, make their decision, and go on from there. So kind of an idea, but feel free to poke around. There's also ones where it's like you could add in lots of scrolling stuff. There's one where you can create where it scrolls, within this box inside here. So there's lots of options. Go play around with them. I always have fun playing around with them. I think they're a ton of fun. So at this point, inside of my modal, I put a form. So you can see I have a submit button, our item name and description, which I put as optional because it is optional. And then over here, I have our modal to-do title, and then our location, which is a drop-down to choose, and then its own submit button. So very simple, very small forms. But so far, that is all of our HTML. It's all done. So, ta-da! So I'm going to now, I'm going to copy over my CSS so that y'all can see what this looks like, all CSS and colored up. Do I have my static files on this one? I don't. I thought I did, but apparently I don't. Oh. It's mad because it's one little space off. Okay, so let me scroll back up, make sure I have my CSS attached in my header. I do, static styles app.css. So let me add a folder. It's going to be called static. Inside of static, I'm going to have a new folder called styles. And inside of styles, I'm going to have a new file called, I believe, what did I call it? App.css. App.css. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and inside of static, I'm going to create a folder called I'm just going to call it JS. And I'm going to create a new file called app.js for now. We won't be worrying about JS, JavaScript stuff today, but that way it's just already in there. So our app.css, pop over, that's my app.py, static, styles, app.css. And then I'll walk you all through what I created. Copy. And paste. Okay. Scroll up to the top so we can start at the top. Let me uncomment. I was working on this little section the other day. I'll show you all what this little fun bug is. This is one that I was thinking about saving. So if y'all want to do the Hacktoberfest with some small bugs within this project, there's one in here that we'll get into. All right, it's all saved. Let me go over here. Ta-da! So now I'm on a different screen than what I've been designing on, and that always makes it difficult because I've been designing on my laptop screen, which obviously you can see is a little bit shorter because there is space down here when I told you there wasn't going to be. But that's because this screen that I'm on right now for the live stream is much larger. But ultimately, the original design was for more of like a tablet screen, which is the size of my laptop screen. So the fact that there is space down here, there won't be space on the correct screen size. But ta-da! If I pull up that's what it looks like. I did get rid of these bubbles because originally we were going to put like the image of Jif peanut butter or of laundry soap and milk, and I was like, that seems like a lot of work to find the right picture every single time for any item, or to use an API to go grab the correct, thing. What happens if you put in like a specific brand of milk and it doesn't have that picture? So that was something I was like, I don't think you necessarily need a picture of honey to know that you need to, what it looks like and that you need to buy it. So I decided to X-nay on the circles here, but in our design, you can see, kind of tab back and forth. Ta-da! You can see it definitely is stretched out because it's on a different screen size than this one. But yay! So let me walk you through the CSS and I'll show you all what I got there. And then we'll work on creating some routes so that when we create a new item, it actually gets saved to our database. So the first thing I have here at the top is importing our Google font. So if you haven't used Google Fonts before, it's fonts, .google.com, I believe. Cool. And we're doing Open Sans. So you do have the ability on Google Fonts to download these fonts and use them yourself on your computer. You also have the option to, do I need to select individual ones? I'll just select one. To select them, and then it gives you the option over here when you select. So I think I selected all of them, but I'm not sure, but I'll just select all of them for now. So that's all of them. And then over here under embed, it gives you the option to do a link, and then into your HTML, and then in your CSS you add this, or you can add this here to your CSS and then just use it as you want. My preference is to use @import. That way all the CSS is in the CSS. But up to you, whichever one you want to do or whichever one you feel comfortable with. I like to have it in here. Then I broke out our colors up here in my root. These are all, if you haven't seen these before, these are CSS variables. So that way I don't have to type out this same color over and over and over again. Usually when it's like one or two colors, I can usually, if I'm working on the CSS like all day or for a couple days, I can remember you start to remember the letters and numbers to get those colors. But when it becomes, when you're dealing with like blur and there's a lot more colors, this can be a lot easier. I also have an extension turned on that does this, where it highlights the colors so that you can see it. So if you're typing these at home and you're like, I can't see the colors, it's an extension. So you can just go to extensions and grab it. I believe it's called like CSS color highlight. Because otherwise you'll just see letters and numbers. It won't show you the color. But I like that so that I can remember which color is which. But always name them something that you will remember, and then you can use them in your design. This is the selector for all, kind of like everything. So our whole project, we're using the same font family, so it just makes it easier if I'm just like everywhere, use this font. That way I don't have to specify, and that way I don't forget, because a lot of times it's really easy to forget something. Like you get all of your like your paragraph tags and your headers and all that stuff, but then you forget like your label. You forget to do that one, or different things like that. So I find it's easier to do an all. Um, then you can see I did make our body, our HTML 100%, so it's 100% the size of the screen, which is why it has this nice tan. If you don't do that, because the end of our actual HTML is right underneath our plus buttons, the rest of this page would be white, because all the stuff that we're working with only comes down to here, right underneath these buttons, and then you'd end up with all this white space. So that makes the whole screen tan. So you can see our body, that makes the whole thing go the length. If I come down here, you can see where that ends. So all the space after those plus buttons would be white if I didn't do that. Then of course, oh, a little redundant there. That's what happens when you're working in it. When you go back and review, that's always why it's good to go back and review and read through your code. You'll catch things like this. But the background, I said it as tan. This is how you use your CSS variables. It's this var with your parentheses and then your name. And if I type it, here I'll do one below so you all can see how that comes up. You can see it starts coming up so that it remembers what I'm typing, because VS Code does a great job of that. And then I don't even have to worry about typing out the whole word every single time. It'll remember it for me. Save that since I made a change. So we go into our header. Of course, we need to center it. I needed to make it the right size and the right weight. I gave it some margin top and bottom, made it nice, and our black color that we have on our design. Boop. Our weather styles, our color of our icons here is that green color, so I need to make sure I use that green. I sized up the icons, and if I close this out, gave them a little bit of space between the icon and the word. If you remember before, they were like smashed next to each other. So a little bit of margin, a little bit of margin. Of course, changed our font size, font weight, and our color, because some of our colors are black and some of them are that lighter black. Same thing, got to make sure we center, because here this one is center, while these two are kind of within their own columns, and these are also within their own columns. So these will automatically be centered because they're at the left of that box. So left of that box. And then one thing that I noticed that gets hard when you start to work within these things is the icons, because they are different shapes, they push the words out a little bit differently than each other. So you can see it kind of has this slight angle with the words, even though they're all padded and spaced the same. Now that's an area for someone like me. This is why I like to stay in the background, because in the doing front end stuff, I can get too perfectionist and nitpicky. But there are the little things like that where you want to start being like, I'm going to pad this, push this one out, 1 more pixel, this one out 2 more pixels, so that's perfectly in line. But then if these icons change, that could change how how these lay out again. Like if this turns into just a sun because it's sunny, that might affect that differently. So that's something you could get really granular on if you want to, and you can test out every single variety of the different weather icons and see how much you need to push for each one. And then you could just have like if statements. If the sun, add 2 pixels of padding. If the rain, add 2 pixels. If this icon, you don't add anything. But that's where it gets really fun, and it can get really, really, nitpicky. Okay. I'm going to jump into our event. So our event, we have a lovely border box. So I pulled this straight from Adobe XD because we made our border box in here. Okay, there you can see our shadow. It tells you right here. Let me see if I can zoom in. I don't know if it'll zoom in on this. It'll zoom in on that. It looks really tiny on. Oh, there we go. I don't know if that's gonna. Nope, that just zooms in the background. I know it looks kind of tiny, so I'm just going to read it to you. There's not a way for me to make the font inside of XD larger that I know of real quick. But I just copied over these shadows so you can see it tells you the X, the Y, and the blur, which is exactly 6, 6, and 16, exactly what I copied over here. So there's one at the top left and then one at the bottom right, and that makes it that full rectangle blur all the way around. So you can see it has that blur effect all the way around the card for both of them. So those are always fun. And the box shadows, you can see I have the first one, a comma, then the second one. You can combine box shadows. So sometimes if you go look at CSS out in the wild, or if you look at examples, you may see, I've seen like 4, 6, like all sorts of box shadows. Because then people who really love to do shadow work get into, here I just did, gray. But they get into all sorts of, using different colors that are within an image to make this really beautiful blur around a photo that looks beautiful. And that's how you can kind of keep it all contained within one, is doing one box shadow and then putting each new shadow style on its own line. But that's a fun one to go Google if you like box shadows. There's a lot of really beautiful examples out there of how to use box shadow to do some really amazing stuff. I'm going to kind of go through the highlights. You can see a lot of the text. I'm making sure it's the right font, right weight, and right color. So the card is its own background color. It's that off-white, so I had to make sure I changed that. Our grocery and to-do styles, when I pulled them in from Bootstrap, they came with their own white background, so I had to go in and change that. So it was something different. It also had a border. I had to get rid of the border so that now there's no border there. But generally, that's what we got going on. Got our labels, giving them some space around. And then this is where we got our, I borrowed this from the web. I really need to add a link to it here. So let me add a, oops. There we go. Oops, to do. Add link to website where I found this example. That way, if anyone else is looking at this, they can see where I got this from, and also to give credit. So my terrible apology for not having that there. I Googled it with a style, I think it was custom style checkbox. Oh, CSS. There's a CSS tricks. There's a dev2. It might have been this dev2 one. Yeah, this is where I got it from. Okay, I'm gonna copy that over. So that makes me feel absolutely terrible. Cool. Usually because I'm like tabbing in and out of that as I'm using it, I go back and do it later, but I need to remember if I'm sharing this with you all to do it right at the start. But this is where one of the fun bugs that I wanted to leave in for anyone that wants to tackle it during Hacktoberfest is right now with the CSS, it does this. Boop, boop, boop. So obviously that's not what we want it to do. We want to be able to click on our checkbox and it checks and stays where it's supposed to be. But right now that's not what it's doing. So that's a problem that needs to be fixed. But if we're going to work on this during Hacktoberfest, I think I'll leave that one in there because that's kind of a fun one to work on, dealing with the CSS that goes with it. So that goes with those two sections. Then coloring our circles, making sure our room location is centered in our circle. This is another one that's really difficult because the letter L, because it has this longer line here, it looks like there's more going on the right side of the letter. So it's actually bumped a pixel or two to the left of center, and it looks more center that way. If I were to change, let me go to, sorry, lots of scrolling, to do section. Let me change one of these to the letter B. Okay. Oh, the B actually looks more center. Now I have to find one that's going to work, or that's going to pull it. It does look more center. Okay, maybe it's fine. Maybe it was just me on my computer being crazy. But that's another one because it's centered within the circle. Different letters, the way that they're shaped, may make it seem like it's not center, even though it is. And that's another one where you can sit there and you can bump pixels left or right depending on which letter is inside. And then I had our design, our circles, making sure that we had our right color. This also has its own shadow, so that it gives that blur around it. This is considered a text shadow instead of a, what was the other one above? Instead of a box shadow, because technically your icons from Font Awesome come in as like a font awesome font. So it comes in, this is a text shadow instead of a box shadow, but it works the exact same way. You input your numbers the exact same way. And then, of course, I needed to make sure it was this right, the same orange color so that it was there. And then we put our plus sign in the middle, and that's about it. Our modal styles, this is one that I was going to propose as another CSS challenge. We didn't design or really set up a design for the modal as a part of our design process at the beginning. So this could be a fun one to use our color palette and let y'all go wild with it. This is just kind of a general one that I did, keeping with our same font weights as the rest of our text and keeping with our button theme going on right now. So that was a quick preview. I know it was really jumbled and I went through it super fast, but I wanted to make sure that we could kind of get through this a little bit faster, because me typing in each of those individual HTML and CSS lines would take us months since I only get to spend an hour with you once a month. So I hope y'all don't mind that I kind of sped through it a little bit, but hopefully I talked through it enough that you kind of get the gist of what I did. And please feel free to take a look at the GitHub repository and pull it and run it on your own machine too. Play around with it. Have as much fun as you want when it's on your own machine. Trust me, you cannot break what I'm doing. It will have no effect on my project, on my side. So have fun to your heart's content. So one thing I wanted to do was to show us how to need to get to our modal down here at the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna copy those over. It's our CSS. Here we go. The to-do form modal, grocery form. So let's do the grocery form first. Form. So I need this URL for. So in Flask, we're gonna change gears a little bit. In Flask, you use a lot of these double bracket, curly bracket parentheses, and that's how you put in stuff from your back end into your front end. So this is saying you're going to use Flask. This is kind of a little, hey, you're using Flask here. You're going to call this function URL4, and you need to find me the function called save grocery, and you need to use the URL and information that goes along with that function. So it's essentially tying this form to that function in your backend. So we're going to do just this one. I'm going to do, whoa. Nope, no thank you. Okay, there we go. Got a little space here. Back over here. Automation app. I think I had app pulled up, but I don't know where it went. So now we're just going through lots of tabs. Save grocery. I'm going to copy this over so we can see what it is and we save a little bit of time. Okay, so this is our function save grocery. So that's what we're connecting our form, this action, when it posts, it'll post to this root. And so the root tied to this function is going to be called save grocery item. So in the browser, it'll go, I'm losing it with all these tabs. I'm going to close some of these things out. It'll go, oops, thank you. Save, if I spell correctly, grocery item. And it'll do that as the route. And then at the end of that function, it redirects me back to the index. So then it'll come back and this will get deleted once it's saved, and it'll come back here. So inside of our grocery, inside of here, the data that we're going to receive from our form comes in as a request.form, and then toDict turns it into a dictionary, which made it, in my opinion, easier to work with. There are a couple other options that you can, I think you can turn it into a list. I thought dictionary was easier. So right now I'm going to comment out this. And you can see I have this print statement here. So it'll print out our data that comes in to the console. And then it'll send us back to our home page. So let's give it a try. Let me make sure this is refreshed. So let's do strawberries. We don't need a description. Submit. So it happened super quick, but it went /save grocery item and then back to here because it's not a big piece of data that we're sending to the back end, so it doesn't take very long for that to happen. But if we come over here, we can see we got item strawberries, description, no description. Awesome. So we're getting our information back from the front end. So again, all we did was we added this action to our form using our Flask notation, which is double parentheses, and then we're telling it what to look for, which is to look for the URL that goes with this function, and then it closes out your brackets. So you can see our save grocery, and it's looking for this, and it calls all of this information. So of course we have our data being printed. So now we need to save it to our database. And I believe I made some changes. Where's our app? Up here. Copy that over. Oops. Oops, I accidentally hit copy again. There we go. Paste, not copy. There we go. Cool. So instead, I just did import groceries, import to-dos. So going to need to use our grocery, which pulls up our grocery.py file that we made a while back. And then grab our model, which is our glist model for our database that tells our database what the information is that's coming and how it should look. Then we're calling its create item method, which we look at our grocery, scroll down. It's just going to create an item in our database for us. And then we're passing in the information we received from our form, which is the data.item, which is strawberries, and the data description, which can be blank and can also be not blank. It's an optional field, and then it redirects us. So another thing I'm going to do is we need to initialize our database. Let me copy that over actually from here so that it gets created on our app. I'm going to go ahead and do to-dos too. See, boop, you can see it popped up. It automatically ran and popped up those two database files inside of our directory already. So let's try and add strawberries to our database. And then I'll show you how we can look at it, and then we'll go from there next month. Oops, what am I doing? Adding something to the... Tell it's been a long day already. So we're just going to do strawberries because remember last time we just looked at it in the console. We didn't actually add it to the database. So we're going to do that this time. Okay, so you can see if I scroll up, there's the strawberries before. Here's our strawberries now, and now you're like, well, we're going to need to see them in our grocery list, right? Well, I'm going to add something at the bottom for now, just so we don't take up too much space. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, all the way over. I'm going to put it inside here. Now, in Flask, remember I said you use those double curly braces, so double curly braces. Or no, actually, for this one, it's curly braces and double percents. It's also a Flask thing. And we're going to do a for loop, and I need to look at my own code to remember. This is usually what I have up on the other screen that I look back and forth on. I need our HTML. Templates, HTML. Scroll to the bottom. Here we go. For item in groceries. And item.title. I'll type this one out. So for item in groceries. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to do a p tag. Now we're going to do our double curly brackets, and then we're going to need our title of our item. And since we just put in title, I'm only just to show that it's working, I'm just going to do it this way. And then we need to end our for loop. Should you just say end for? So ending your for loop. So starts your for loop, looping through all the items in our groceries. Going to print out the item.title, and then it's going to end our for loop once that is complete. Let me make sure I just did that correctly. Cool, did it. In our app.py, we need to get our grocery list. So app.py. Now in our index, we're going to need to, of course, get all of our grocery items so we can print them out to the console. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab grocery. I added this little class method. And I know we're kind of over time. I wanted to show this. So I added another class method. Tab. That is called getAll, and all it's doing is running our .select, which gets everything inside of our database, and then it's ordering it by the title, descending. So that's going to get all of the information we need for us. So inside of here, we need to go groceries equals, I call this grocery dot glist dot get all. That's the function, and that should get all of our information. I'm going to go to our app.py just to check, double check myself. Yep, dot get all. I'm going to print our each item in our grocery just for speed. I'm going to copy paste. So just to print to the console, this is kind of like my way of double checking. that it's going to get printed, and then we need to pass it into our render template so it actually gets passed into our HTML. So we need groceries equals groceries. Okay. Now this is what yesterday for some reason was not working, and I asked two friends to look at it and it worked just fine for them. And then I opened up my code again and it worked just fine for me. So that's one of the fun things with coding, is when things just don't work and you don't know why, and then they work and then they do. So there's our strawberries. So a quick recap. I got all of our groceries from our grocery list, which is using .select to selects everything in our database, and ordering it by the title. So if we add another one, it'll order it. So we can go ahead and do that. Let's do lemons. Ta-da, lemons. So it's ordering by descending. So it'll be Z to A, right? Let's do apples, and we can check and see if yep. So it's adding it below. So we can of course change this to, I think it's ASC. I'm not sure. We're going to do it. We're going to see what happens. If it breaks the code, we know that's not how you spell it. Ah, that is how you spell it. So now you can see it's apple, lemon, strawberry. So that just changes the order on our grocery file to grab all of our groceries. It just changes the direction your list will print out in. So of course here in the console, it does the exact same thing. So they were strawberries, lemons, apples. Here's our apples, lemons, strawberries. So we know that we're connected. We know that we're adding stuff to the database and we're pulling stuff from the database so that we can see it. So for next time, let me do it on this view. We need to do the same thing on our task list, our to-dos, so that we can do the same thing, send things to the database and get things out. Then we need to work on our ability to edit these and delete them. And then that's kind of it for all of the functionality. Then it's just finishing up final touches on making it look pretty, and the checkboxes working, and things like that. So we'll finish up those little pieces of functionality next month. And then if y'all are down for it, I'll get this set up so that it has some JavaScript, some CSS, some Python, things to fix and play around with during Hacktoberfest. So hope you all enjoyed it. I know this was a little bit different. We kind of did a little fast forward button. But again, like I said, if I had done every single piece of HTML code, we would have been here until Christmas just doing HTML. And I didn't want to do that. I kind of wanted us to get to more of the finished product so we could see stuff working on the front end. So anyways, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I hope you're sticking in there. I know that we are all in different parts of the world and dealing with different things, but hopefully these live streams are a little break from your day and something to hang out with me and spend some time talking and looking at code. But anywho, I hope to see you all around. I am working on some great stuff, some great Python stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and we have content coming out like every month. So come see us at teamtreehouse.com. We have amazing pieces of content for all sorts of things: CSS, HTML, JavaScript, Python, React. I could go on. There's so much there. Go check it out for yourself and find what you're looking for. That's it for me. And sorry, Karen, I made you stay a little bit longer. My apologies. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all next month. Have a great one. Bye, everyone.